Hey, sunshine. How about that?
Oh, this is a beautiful place. Isn't it a beautiful place?
Probably no two people know more about the gorge and its wildflowers than our guides today.
You're seeing a lot of beautiful camas.
Nancy Russell founded Friends of the Columbia Gorge, and Russ Jolly actually wrote the book on the wildflowers of the gorge.
And of all the kinds of days that I am up here at the Camas Patch, this is my favorite, where there are clouds, so the light's a little different on the river.
Yeah, and we're just lucky enough to not be in that shower over there.
Camas is in the lily family, the same as onions, and this variety does have an edible root bulb. But some camas is highly toxic.
Back when the Chinook Indians were lining the shore of the river, this had been a source for food, and there's no death camas here. It was weeded out, presumably by the Indians.
The flower of the death camas looks nothing like the edible variety, but when the bloom is gone, it takes an expert to recognize which roots are deadly.
When this camas show is over, that isn't the end of things. There's a whole bunch of lupin here.
Near the lupin and camas, several other species thrive in a small, wet seep.
The mimulus, the yellow monkey flower there, it has to have moisture.
Why is it called the monkey flower?
Somebody's imagination. Somehow they figured that looked like a monkey. I don't know.
I don't see it.
I don't see it either, but that's what they call them.
Russ has studied plants in the gorge for more than 30 years.
Its botanical name is Amsynchia, but it's called fiddleneck. See this curl here, like the top of a violin?
He's identified more than 800 native wildflowers.
This is just what you call flowers. It doesn't include a lot of other plants, but what you normally call flowers is probably about 800.
It's quite a reservoir of plants that you don't find, that have disappeared from other parts of the state.
One reason many plants survive in the gorge is the rugged terrain, which kept development at bay until fairly recently. Another reason is the diversity of climates created by the gorge's unique topography.
You think about the gorge going from the western rainforest to the oak woodlands between Hood River and Mosier, and then when you get out toward the Dalles, you're in sagebrush and sand dune country where you're going from a lot of rainfall to very, very little rainfall.
There are plants that thrive beside rivers and side canyons, plants that like shade, and others in the sun.
And then you also go from near sea level up to 4,000 feet. So anytime you've got all kinds of different habitats, you've got great diversity of plant life.
16 flower species, like this one, grow nowhere else but the Columbia Gorge.
Barrett's penstemon. It grows from just east of Hood River to the Klickitat River.
Some flowers grow only where it's wet.
This is a plaintain-leaf buttercup. These ponds dry up totally. By the end of summer, they're just dry as a bone. But while they're still wet, these things bloom and make a pretty good show.
Other flowers like it where it's mostly dry. And some seem to grow on next to nothing.
How about that for habitat? That's a bitterroot plant, called rock rose, or Lewisia rediviva is its botanical name.
Lewisia for Meriwether Lewis, who collected it during the expedition, and rediviva, which means comes back to life. The story goes that Lewis carried the plant back east to a botanist who examined it more than a year later.
A year and a half after the expedition, when he opened the package to look at this plant, it was in bloom. And so he named it rediviva.
The bitterroot uses energy and moisture from its own leaves to bloom.
As it blooms, the leaves shrivel up and die. When the plant is in full bloom, when all the buds have turned into blossoms, there will be no leaves at all. You won't see a leaf.
There are threats to this diversity of plants that survive in the gorge. One is grazing by cattle and horses.
If this land were heavily grazed, the balsam would be gone.
Introduced species, like Scotch broom and blackberries, are another problem.
They're invasive, actually can overrun native plant populations.
Russ pulls out the Scotch broom.
It'll take over the whole place.
Yeah.
Take it entirely over.
Mr. Scotch broom puller.
Yeah.
But perhaps the biggest threat comes from people moving to the gorge for its beauty. Remember the Camas Patch? It was once for sale as a residential development.
There are 2 points of view on a beautiful property like this. I think most people come out and they say, that's where I want to put my home. But people like me come out to a place like this and say, this would make a wonderful park. Wouldn't it be wonderful to keep it just the way it is?
The Camas Patch will be preserved. It's now owned by the Trust for Public Lands. Since Congress designated the gorge a National Scenic Area in 1986, more property has been acquired for public ownership. If you plan to look for wildflowers, it's a good idea to pick up a Forest Service map that indicates which land is public, or go with someone who knows.
Oh, here's a beautiful one up here. This is like looking for Easter eggs.
Going with a guide also can help in finding the more unusual flowers.
This is Calypso bulbosa, the Calypso Orchid. Beautiful little terrestrial orchid, and they don't like disturbance. Logging destroys them, so you don't see them very often. Also, they have quite a short blooming season. A perfect orchid in miniature. Anybody would recognize it for an orchid.
Just small. It's as beautiful as any of those you find in Hawaii.
Oh, here's one here. Did you see this one? It's called chocolate lily. Most of the color is in the stamens and in the speckling on the inside of the petals. I think they're lovely.
Nancy says a good place to begin discovering the wildflowers of the Columbia Gorge is the Rowena Plateau.
Lovely area. Look at all these beautiful flowers. The best time of year to come is in the spring. That's when most of the flowers are blooming.
Look as long as you like, but please resist the temptation to pick the wildflowers. Leave them for the next person to enjoy.
Generally, it isn't smart to pick flowers, and certainly one should never dig up a plant and take it home, because it won't like it at home. It'll just die. So if you want to enjoy wildflowers, come out and see them in the wild. That is a paintbrush, vivid red, very common in the gorge, very showy. This is a good place to see it. Beautiful thing.